How's it going?
Hi. It's good.
I'm doing pretty well. I think the network is lagging for a little bit, so I'm
Okay.
going to see if we can reconnect in a second.
Okay.
Okay, I can hear it properly. Yeah, so I was just saying we're super excited and happy to have you on our platform today for on behalf of C. So welcome.
Yes.
And for
Thank
those
you.
who actually before we start in, I wanted to be able to introduce you to the audience and basically, obviously, the purpose of today's chat is that we are celebrating our Black excellency, the forefathers, the iconic scholars, educator, and obviously change makers as yourself. And
Yes.
for those who are watching from home, we have with us today, he is the Honourable Minister Mitzie Hunter, the MPP of Scarborough, Guildwood riding. She's recently served as a Ministry of Advanced Education, Skills and Development. She has served as a Minister of Education and Associate of Minister of Finance, responsible for pension reform. She's also the former CEO of the Greater Toronto Civics Action Alliance. Just to highlight some of her political achievements, it includes becoming our first province, first Black Ministry of Education in June 2016, as well as serving 2 years as a Toronto Community Housing First Chief Administrative Officer, where she held an organization, strategic and business support functions. She also was first elected in a by-election in August 1st of 2013, and then later on got re-elected as an election of 2014 as well as 2018. She's presently the Toronto riding for Scarborough Guildwood. With greatest pleasure today to have you here. I am super, super honored. Please allow us to welcome the Honorable Mitzie Hunter. How are you
Thank
doing?
you. I'm very good. It's wonderful to be here, Nancy, and it's just a pleasure. So I feel very blessed. Thank you.
And nice, nice, awesome. I actually to I get a more briefing because I know for you are actually been inspiration to a lot of young Ontarians and young Canadians in the country. So I just want to ask, who was one of your political influence in growing up?
Well, I had many. I guess first of all, my journey here,
Mm-hmm.
like many of us, I immigrated to this country
Mm-hmm.
from Jamaica, and I was a child, and my parents brought my brothers and I here so that we could have a better life, through education and hard work. And, did I think that many years later I would have become Ontario's first Black Minister of Education? I'm a girl from Scarborough. I grew up, with many cultures and diverse people around me, and really it was great because I could still sample and enjoy my authentic culture, and at the same time I could be part of the whole in terms of the city and can really imagine. So my earliest inspiration came directly from my family. My grandmother, she was the
Mm-hmm.
matriarch of our family. My parents, my father owned his own business. So entrepreneurship was something that I was exposed to from a very early age. My poor brothers used to go to work with him every weekend, and I saw how hard they worked, and that was something that I knew got you success in life. That direct hard work. My mom, she really provided a space for us as young children and young adults to just really
Yeah.
get confidence and to really believe in ourselves. We would have dinner together every night and talk about our day, and just, we would really have that space. And my dad used to always say to me, "You're going to be a lawyer," because I would always have an argument that I could settle. And so those were my early inspirations. Later on, when I went to university and I got to go out into the world, I actually put a lot of those skills that I learned in my family to really good use. I started to get involved in student politics. I really, you know, put forward my ideas and got people to support them. And it was in the early 1990s, and there was a recession. So I ended up starting a summer company as a student at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. And of course, anyone that has started something on their own, you know, you just make it work, and you develop those skills, and you never lose them. So, so that's really, you know, some of my early days. Alvin Curling, he discovered me when I had my own business and brought me into the political landscape. You know, just using the skills that I had as an entrepreneur, writing proposals for Caravana at the time, and they received their first multi-year contract from the provincial government as a result of that proposal. Dr. Jean Augustine, you know, we got to celebrate her right now because she's the one that put forward Black History Month 25 years ago. And it is now something that we can talk about and have some really deep conversations about in terms of the real history of very early as well. She opened her space to me, and has still done so. In fact, it continues to be a mentor to this day. So, you know, I guess one of the things that for me is that, you know, my family, immigrants, hardworking, but the life of being in politics was not something that I got from my family. I had to look outside, and there were many people there that opened themselves up to my questions and to supporting me. So kind of gives you a little flavor of the personal as well as the professional.
That's an incredible journey, just to see how you have taken your family value as well as your inner passion to kind of like maneuver through all your life journey to becoming who you are today, and also just kind of like sharing with us what was like with all the experience that you have been through. And I also wanted to know, in terms of the role of your government at the moment, what is some of the responsibility from your level of government that you're responsible for?
Well, you know, like Nancy, I've come full circle in government, right? So as you've heard from my background, I didn't start off being a politician. First, I was an entrepreneur and a businesswoman. Then I worked in large corporations. I worked at Bell Canada. I became a director while I was there. And then I moved into the tech space, and I did that for a while, and eventually went into nonprofit, worked at Goodwill Industries, and you mentioned Toronto Community Housing, TCHC. And along the way, I continued to grow my education, right? So I got my undergraduate degree at U of T Scarborough, but later on I went back and I did my MBA and my Master of Business Administration so that I can really hone those business skills, right? Those natural skills and abilities that I had, I put the education under it to strengthen my foundation. And so when I ran for office in 2013, and I got to tell you, one of the pieces of advice that my mentor, Dr. Jean Augustine, gave me, and this was when I was a manager at Bell Canada, I went into her office to talk to her. She was in Etobicoke Lakeshore, and we had a store in her community, and I probably went to go talk to her about, you know, about that, and you know, just, you know, it was more just a routine visit. And as I was about to leave, she told me to hold on a minute, and she gave me some advice, and she said, "Mitzie, when you get the call, you must be ready." And, you know, I left her office and I was like, the call? I wonder what the call is, but I'm going to be ready. You know, I just sort of affirmed that to myself. And, you know, in between, as I said, I did my MBA. Maybe that's what I needed when I got the call. I needed to have credentials. you know,
Yeah.
maybe I need a second language. I need to learn French, you know, and, you know, I wasn't exactly sure what it was, but I knew that it was about being prepared. It was about doing your homework. It was about being qualified. It was also about reaching forward for things that perhaps you know, are bigger than you would have imagined, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she really encouraged me. And so one day I did get the call, and I was asked to run in a by-election in Scarborough, in the community that I'd grown up in, and you know, and I knew so well. And I ran in the by-election. This was in 2013, and I won. I won my seat. It was actually on August 1st, so it was Emancipation Day that I won my seat in the legislature. And, you know, I want to describe that. Can we just have that conversation tonight with C and the audience there? Because,
Yes, of course.
you know, there's only a limited number of people who are your representatives, right? And, you know, on August 1st, I became one of them. You know, Mitzie Hunter, granddaughter of Eva Hunter, right? And so I walk into the legislature, and they had green carpet and green chairs. And I remember taking my seat in those green chairs and just really feeling that I was there to use my voice on behalf of the
Mm-hmm.
people who elected me to this office, because it was so rare. And because at the time when I was elected in 2013, I was the only Black woman in the legislature. And so, you know, I really felt that. I really felt that that representation really mattered. My voice really mattered. My excellence really mattered. And I had to make a difference, right? And
Yeah.
so a year after I was first elected, there was another general election, and I was reelected again by the people of Scarborough, Guildwood. And the premier called and invited me to join the cabinet, and I became
Mm-hmm.
the Associate Minister of Finance. And I was working on a pension plan called the Ontario Retirement Pension Plan, which was the largest pension reform since the establishment of the Canada Pension Plan, the CPP, in the 1960s. And
Yeah.
I had the benefit of going across the country, working with finance ministers and developing this pension plan that later actually led to the expansion of CPP benefits for all working Canadians. And it was, you know, it was really great, because you remember that MBA that I used, and Dr. Jean Augustine said, you better be ready. It came in really handy when I was doing, you know, pension reform, and later, you know, implemented financial literacy in our
Yeah.
schools, right? And and then, of course, after being the Associate Finance Minister, I became the Minister of Education, and really working on issues like equity in education, establishing a secretariat, looking at things like anti-Black racism, looking at things like Indigenous, and making sure that there is curriculum based on Indigenous peoples, and the ways of knowing and being are truly reflected in our school system. Making sure there's fairness for LGBTQ plus students, and for students with disabilities, youth in the care of children's aid and foster care, youth with learning disabilities, you know, really looking at how we make our education system in Ontario an excellent one for all students. And you know, I was very passionate about being Minister of Education. I would visit one school each and every week. And, you know, when I walked in, students could see me. And if you can
Yeah.
see me, you can be me, right? And all the students were able to see that, you know, and I had so many amazing experiences as the Minister of Education, and seeing students learn, going to the far north, the remote north in Ontario, going even on reserve in Indigenous regions in the province.
Mm.
And so I had that opportunity. I later became Minister of Advanced Education for universities, colleges, and trades. That was also really important. But then what happened in 2018, Nancy, is that we lost government. So the Ontario Liberals lost government in 2018, and
Yeah.
we were reduced to 7 seats in the entire province. And, you know, that's a big loss, right? Because we had about, I believe, 58 seats when the election was called. And so that's a big loss. But you know what? The people of Scarborough Guildwood reelected me. And I won my seat in the last election by 74 votes.
Wow.
74 votes, right? So think about that. So less than 100 people that said, Mitzie, we want you to stay here. And, you know, when I do the work that I do as an MPP in my riding, and right now I'm doing all kinds of work, and we're building more childcare capacity for before and after school childcare in the community. We're, of course, fighting for COVID relief in Scarborough because it's a hot spot. Vaccines, making sure that people get vaccines. And, you know, there is hesitancy, for instance, in the Black community in terms of vaccines. And it hurts my heart because when you look at the disproportionate effect of the virus on people of color, on the Black population in particular, it's quite significant. And so if there's any hesitancy in getting the protection, then that means that the Black population will continue to be exposed to this virus. And so, you know, making sure that there's equity and fairness built into the distribution of our health system, and all of those areas. As a local member of provincial parliament, just last night, I had a town hall and there was 2,000 people on the call. And, you know, individuals asking me live questions. You know, the first caller, her name was Shirley, and she was 86 years old, and she wanted to know where she could get her vaccine, right? She's asking her MPP. And, you know, and I'm accountable to Shirley, right? Because Shirley is a very important constituent of mine in the community. And so I'm very passionate about representing, I still have that feeling, you know, that I'm there to be a strong voice for my community. I'm there to stand up, to tell truth to power, and advocate on behalf of the residents of Scarborough, Guildwood, and all Ontarians, and to make lives better. That's what I do each and every day as a representative in the Legislative Assembly of Ontario.
I mean, that's actually very profound. I love the fact that you were able to just kind of connecting the dot of like for your message from your mentor and then going into the journey, as well as understanding that your presence matter, because your presence kind of speak volume, but also speak to the people that look like you, and also bringing value to you back to your community, where your Scarborough being is the forefront of that. Also, just going back with the whole experience and how you were able to maneuver, how you were able to wait for that call and finally taking action with that call, going from being the first woman of color as a Minister of Education and also being reelected as an official MPP. What would be some of your teachable moments from your experience, would you say?
Well, you know, I want everyone watching and for your CEE network to recognize that you really matter and that you have something to contribute. I know that CEE invests a lot in entrepreneurship for Black youth, and that's how I started. You know, no one handed Mitzie anything, right? I just created it out of nothing. It was a recession, and I thought, okay, well, I need to pay for school, so I'm going to have to do something. What talents do I have? And, you know, I ended up a company that was a talent agency. I then expanded it to a marketing and communications agency with recurring clients. And I learned a really valuable lesson that if you can think entrepreneurially, and really where you're not out to go get a job, but you're out to create a job, then that thinking and that way will just be how you think. And that's how I think. So, you know, when I later, you know, got into corporate environments, I was still this very creative person that was self-reliant, using resources effectively, marketing, selling, doing all of those things. And, you know, I took that right into being a cabinet minister, You know, I wasn't a career politician. It's not something that I had done for my whole career. And so when I worked with the team in the ministries, it really was like being the CEO of a company and just really looking at not how we've always done things. You know, I remember the first time someone said that to me, well, we've always done it this way and we've never tried it. I said, well, what will it take to try it? Because that's what I want to do. Let's beta test this. Let's pilot this, you know, let's figure it out and do something different. Because I would always say, as Minister of Education, first of all, there is nothing wrong with our students. It's the system that needs to shift and change to support all students to learn. And every year in a student's life matters. And so whatever we're doing, we have to do it with some haste, do it well, but understand that each year will matter. So we can't, you know, take too long in the transformation that we need. And so, you know, those are some of the moments that I had. And part of it is that I have to always keep moving forward, right? I can't look back. I can't, you know, there is no looking back. You just have to continue to look forward, and that has served me really, really well. I also believe in getting out of your comfort zone. If you are, you know, doing something that doesn't challenge you, that you're not passionate about, why are you doing it? And so getting out of your comfort zone and stretching yourself, doing things that really challenge you, I think makes life and work worth doing. And then that's just how I've always sort of lived my life. And, you know, someone just said to me recently as I was speaking to them, Mitzie, I don't know how you do all the things you do. And for me, it's like, well, this is so normal and it's so natural. You know, as a young person coming up in my career, one of the things that I always did was volunteer. I found things that I was passionate about, whether it was sport or the arts or, of course, business. I was always, you know, excited about just sort of thinking about infrastructure. I remember as a young manager at Bell Canada, I was on the committee, the infrastructure committee at the Toronto Board of Trade, and, you know, thinking about the city infrastructure and what we needed to do. And you know, that was just who I was. And before I knew it, I had volunteered on over 100 committees and boards in my career. And so being a volunteer and giving back and living a life of service is something that I feel is really important. So, you know, one of the organizations I volunteered for was called Civic Action. And, you know, they were looking for a CEO at one point. And I ended up becoming the full-time CEO for an organization that I had volunteered, done the work for free for 10 years before ending up becoming its leader. You know, and that's just, that's something that I would encourage, you know, all young people watching, like, you know, really think about your community and the things that you care about and get involved. You know, I have to say, another teachable moment for me, I'm currently the finance critic for the Ontario Liberal Party. And so I sit on the Standing Committee of Finance and Economic Affairs for the province. So when we have a budget later on that is tabled, I will, as part of that committee, review the budget bill and provide input. And oftentimes we invite people to have consultations with the committee. There are not enough people who represent the Black community showing up at those consultation tables. We are making decisions about broadband infrastructure. We are making decisions about transit infrastructure, municipal financing and funding, arts, culture, you know, Afrofest actually came to our consultation that we had in the summer, and they were such a unique and powerful voice at the table. And I just wished that many more other organizations, young organizations, youth organizations would come forward. There were also individuals that came from the Jane and Finch community, the Black Creek community. And I have to say, every time they came forward, their voice just really resonated, because it wasn't just the same sort of ideas. It was new and fresh in different perspectives. And we need that as government policy. We need more, first of all, we need more Black people and people of diverse backgrounds taking courses that lead to public policy and administrative roles, and because that is what shapes the government at the end of the day in terms of how we interface with government. So we need more diverse people getting involved, getting at the table, offering ideas and suggestions, and making your voice known and heard. So that is another moment that I will share with you.
These were really, really incredible. I love how you covered the fact that we have to stay innovative. We have to start thinking outside of the box, but also we have to be comfortable enough to show up in those spaces and give our ideas and give our input so that it matters also in the voice while actions are being taken. And I love the fact that you also kind of stress the fact that your presence in each of these situations where decisions are made is very valuable. It's very essential for that. And so what do you think can be done to get more women of colors in the political spaces?
Yeah, and that's something that I would welcome. As I said, when I started out, I was the only Black woman there. Now on some of the other parties, we have a few more Black women, and trust me, it's not enough. We need more. So we are going to be having a provincial election in the next 18 months. That's not a long time. And each of the parties are recruiting right now. Of course, I represent the Ontario Liberal Party. And if you just go to ontarioliberal.ca, there's information there about, running for us as candidates and getting a seat. That we deserve a seat at the table. Yes, we do deserve a seat at the table, and we need more people who will put themselves forward for office at every level of government. Federally, there will be an election probably even sooner federally. They are looking for candidates. Marcy Ian, she just took her seat. Now she's the only Black woman that was there for a long time. Selena Caesar Chavan was the only Black woman. I remember Selena and we used to call each other because she was the only one federally and I was the only one provincially. So we sort of, talked to each other to support what we were doing. But we need more than just one and two here and there. We need lots of people. We need more Black mayors and Black city councilors, Black trustees. Imagine more Black people as school board trustees. We talk about, improving curriculum, and we talk about anti-Black racism in our school systems, which is so important. Well, think about if more of us were sitting at that decision-making table, what influence would we have? So I welcome it, and it is an opportune time. Right now, we are in a change now moment. I gave a talk after the unfortunate death of George Floyd last summer, and just the movement that had broken out, and I called it Change Now. And it really is a vision for our community. And we need bold action. We need to change the systems, and in order for that to happen, we need our people showing up, and being represented. And that, I see now where there is a sweeping movement of change in our corporate world as well, in our newsrooms and media, in journalism, in law. And we need it in all areas, in justice, in politics, in academia and education, in business, in trades, so look at the challenges we're having in the trades. So, we need, we've been part of Canada since before Canada was a country. Black people were here, right? We all know the story. This is for Black History Month, so let me give you some history. So Matthews da Costa was an interpreter, and I would argue an explorer. And when Samuel de Champlain was sort of exploring the lands that would later become Canada, He hired Matthews da Costa as his interpreter because he knew the indigenous languages. He knew multiple languages, which means that he was here before.
Indeed, indeed.
Let me just let that sink in, right?
Yes.
And that was well over 400 years ago. We also know the Black loyalists that came forward, settled in Canada. I've been to Birchtown, Nova Scotia, and seen those settlements. There's a Black loyalist museum there. You know, the evidence is there. You know, I was watching CBC the other night, and there was a gentleman on from Alberta, 5th generation Albertan, Black man. We are Canadians. We're part of this fabric of this country, you know, and other than Indigenous people who have been stewarding this land for millennials, you know, we are part of the founding of this nation. And I want us to take our seat at the table.
Most definitely. And I feel like you have brought a lot of negative knowledge and a lot of wisdom to be able to encourage not even just our viewers, but our youth that are currently sitting at home. They'll be able to kind of rethink some of their actions and also rethink some of the career path in order to make that change. So for those who are thinking about making some changes within their community, maybe being in politics could be that change and could be that vessel to bring more our voices heard. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I also wanted to ask you, what are you hoping from your writing or your community to be able to kind of do in order to support you even more, kind of conveying that message to keep on going on?
Sure. You know, I always love talking about my writing, but I want to also, just based on what you said just a while ago, about the message to our community, you know, there's also, because we're two females here talking, right? And we can talk, right? I'm getting that vibe from you, and I know I can talk, right? So, but there's also the men, right? The young men in our community. And I, you know, so I grew up in my home that I grew up in. I had 2 older brothers and a younger brother. And so, of course, that's where I learned how to talk, because if I did not, right, you have to speak up. Otherwise, the boys will just run you over. So my younger brother, in Scarborough, where we went to school, you know, he ended up being very good at basketball. And, you know, he was his MVP for his high school, and he was recruited, and he went to the US to play in the Division I NCAA school. He graduated with his Bachelor of Science. He took computer science, and he was recruited to play in Europe. And he played for the Euro Basketball League, you know, for countries like Italy, Portugal, the UK. He played in the UK, and many other countries. Like, I mean, it's over a dozen countries over a decade. And then eventually, after I got my MBA, he got his as well. So he had this successful sport career combined with, you know, finance and MBA, and he's now working here back in Canada. He's raising a family in Brampton, him and his wife, and he is in the financial sector. And I share his story because I really want our brothers, our young men, to see that they too have voice, they too have agency, they too have creativity, they too have aspirations. They are scientists, and they have all kinds of ways that they can contribute, and we need them. We need all of our young people, all their energies, all their ideas, all their creativity. You know, one of the things that I realized as education minister is half of Black boys, Black students do not graduate, the boys. And there's a challenge in our education system that we have to fix, because that's a crisis. And we have to find ways of engaging those young men, those young individuals, tapping into their creativity. Is it coding? Is it gaming? You know, what is it that they are passionate about? Is it more athletics? Like my younger brother was, you know, an excellent, skilled basketball player. But as his older sister, I said, you also need a degree. And so he had to get both, and he did, right? So we can set the bar higher. We can raise the expectations. We can demand excellence from our young people because they are well able, they are capable. And that is something that I believe in, and I will always support that. So in my community in Scarborough, Guildwood, I am looking for ways of doing just that. We have challenges like literacy is a challenge. And so how do we support literacy programs and organizations like the Reading Partnership is a really great example in my community, having programs that teach parents and children how to read together. My brother, who I just described to you, he has a new baby. Jordan, and do you see how proud I am of Jordan? Jordan is 2 months old, and Jordan and Auntie Mitzie read together every week. I would do it every day if I could. Every week at least, we read together, and he listens to me. We're doing it through technology, but he listens to me. I read him a story by Bob Marley's daughter, Three Little Birds. I did all the actions, and he loved that story. And so, instilling that love of words and literature and that capability from a very young age is really, really important in our communities, equipping young people with the skills that they need. Right now, I'm working on a childcare program, as I mentioned. I want to make sure that all of the schools in my community have options for childcare for parents that are clear, immersive, and supportive of students and parents and families. There's a hub that we want to put in for training as well as recreation in one of the high schools that actually closed in the community called Borden. So that's a project that I'm very passionate about. And what I'm known for, if you look it up, you will see that I am known as the Subway champion, and that's what I'm known for, because I believe that Scarborough deserves better transit, that all the buses and the broken down RT that we have, we need better, higher order transit. And get people off of buses and moving to where they need to go, to school, to work, to worship, wherever they need to go. They need to do that in a fast and rapid way with good quality, reliable, accessible transit. So I want to see the subway built. Yes, I want to see anyone who has grown up or traveled to Scarborough. They support me because I grew up on those buses, and I used to work downtown at Bell Canada and study at the far end of Scarborough at U of T Scarborough. So can you imagine how much time I spent on the bus, running to Kennedy Subway, trying to get down to the 4 flights to catch my bus to get to work? And all these years later, people are still doing that, and there's many more people living there. We deserve better transit in Scarborough, and I'm so thrilled that the City of Toronto has seen this and has made Scarborough Transit a priority. They just committed funding. It's going to go to full council, $1.2 billion for an LRT, which is, it's literally just rides on the surface mostly, but it's still great rapid transit. And so they just committed that as a priority. It would be great if they heard from lots of people saying this is important, because I can tell you a lot of other parts of the city are demanding that money, but it's going to be for Scarborough Transit, and I'm thrilled. Of course, the provincial government has long committed to the subway expansion. And there are other routes as well, like dedicated bus routes from Durham to the Scarborough Town Centre. You may not have heard about it. It's not like one of these, sexy projects, but it's very important. And so I'm all about transit. I would hope that the Lakeshore line for the GO, which is already built, would be more accessible, that the fares would be lower. So the people in my community, because they can't really afford to get on it right now at the higher cost, if it was the same price as a TTC fare, they would use it. So I advocate for transit in any form, in any shape, be it a subway, an LRT, a dedicated bus route, or the existing GO network, making it more accessible, because I believe the people of Scarborough deserve it.
Amen.
The last thing I'll share, I'm advocating for lots of other things, but the last thing I will share is healthcare. There are a lot of health indicators in my community that are sad. Diabetes and kidney disease are very high in Scarborough. I believe that the kidney disease is the highest in Scarborough than anywhere else in Canada. And so we need good health care in our community. I'd like to see a new hospital built, and so that's next.
Amazing. I love the fact that how you stress the subway transit program, because I too grew up in Scarborough, and then when I got accepted to UIT in Oshawa, commuting wise, it was another problem. And then moving into downtown during my second year of university, I do kind of understand the frustrations of us just kind of commuting back and forth, the transit not being reliable, the timing and all that situation. And I'm actually happy to see that you guys are progressing and making sure that the infrastructures of these transit are being improved, and then there's actually budget for it. And even now, with my experience being in Oshawa, I know that in Durham, at the time when I was studying there, they had, a student would just have to show their ID and the ride will be free. So if you show your UIT ID, you automatically just get a free ride. Is that something that Toronto can also implement for their students?
I think that's a great idea. And why don't I challenge you and your listeners to write in? We are having pre-budget consultations right now. So the government is listening to ideas from the community. And submit it. Go on ontario.ca and submit your idea. If you want to see free transit for students in Toronto or across the province, I would encourage you to submit that. I would support that. Why not? I know the City of Toronto has already implemented free for students under 12. I heard last night on my teletown hall that seniors wanted to have free transit as well. I would support it for sure.
For sure. So whoever.
And remember, it's not free, right?
No, it wasn't technically. Okay, so
let me just say, it's not. Go ahead, Neecee.
Well, as we were showing our student ID, which is a thing, I'm not sure if UIT was covering that cost, but that's why we were allowing us to take the GO Transit to come all the way to Scarborough Town Center, and that ride was technically free. And then around Durham region, we can take any buses as long as we're showing our ID that with the school stamp on it. Yeah,
I know that there are some schools that pay for it through the student fees, like through your levies. So it's actually you are paying for it, right? It's an arrangement that's been made. I think that's a great idea. And to find ways, it has to be covered some way, right? Because the TTC is not going to be able to just forego revenue. So either the province would pay, the city would pay, or students would pay through their user fees and their levies. But at the end of the day, it makes our community better. Less cars, less pollution, and more ease of getting around. So I fully support that.
And I also heard when one of your conversations you mentioned that you wanted to currently build a hospital. How is the plan so far for that project? Is it like an ongoing or just still in discussion?
Oh no, there's a master plan. Scarborough is ready. We are long overdue for a new hospital. We're just waiting for the provincial government to advance the money and advance the plan. Because when we were in office, Ontario Liberals, we had put aside over $1 billion for the capital for Scarborough Hospital. So it is there in the planning, but it needs to be moved forward. So once again, let your voice be heard. Write to your local MPP, especially if you're in Scarborough, and say, release the money and fund the Scarborough Hospital.
Okay. All right. So as a former Minister of Education, education is obviously important, and you have stressed it so much during our conversations. And one of your obviously action plan that I have read in your site, you talked about a future proofreading of Ontario in efforts to reduce the barriers and promoting equal opportunities. with the recent government cuts for Ontario's student loans and the student experience, obviously that's kind of creating a lot of obstacles. But you also discuss about the flight program. How far are you guys along with that in order to kind of like making sure that we're securing those barriers and also impacting the student who are being impacted by the cuts?
Yeah, so you were looking at my policy when I was running to lead the Ontario Liberal Party. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. So let me tell your viewers. So I put my name forward to be the next Premier of Ontario by running to lead the Ontario Liberal Party. I did not win that leadership. We have another leader, Stephen Del Duca, who is now leading the party. But I was the first Black woman to run to lead a major political party in Ontario, and very proud of that. It was an excellent experience for me. I came second in the North, so there was a lot of support there in the North for me. I had visited the Northern Ontario many times during that year that I was running as to be the leader. And, you know, I really believe in public education, in fact, and at every level. So from K to 12, even preschool as well, and also into post-secondary. And so I wanted to see the Ford government reverse the $1 billion cut almost that they've made to OSAP, because that cut in provincial dollars is actually shifting the burden on the backs of students. And that means that more students, more Black students, more people of color, more single moms who had wanted to go back and upgrade their skills, they have to come up with that money, and they have to be saddled with student debt. And I really feel that, you know, we should make tuition more accessible and lower cost and available to all who need it. And so that's part of my proposal. And so when I say take flight, I mean, you know, rather than people being saddled with debt, that they're able to, if they do have loans, they're able to defer the interest on those loans, that they're able to get more grants versus loans and start their life and contributing to our economy on a faster basis. So it's like being on a runway. They could just take off.
Most definitely. That's incredible. And also, for me, growing up in Scarborough, I had a lot of rooted memories. Those were amazing years that during my teenage in Scarborough. What would you say some of your greatest memory growing up in Scarborough?
Well, Scarborough is the place to be. Just ask the Weekend, where he grew up, right? So, you know, it was just great. I had a lot of freedom as a young person, maybe because I just walked everywhere and rode my bike everywhere. And, you know, so I would ride through the trails and the ravines. They're just beautiful. Scarborough has a lot of parks and a lot of green space and water. We're in a watershed community. We're right on the shore of Lake Ontario, Scarborough Bluffs, I'm sure. There's a natural beach. Did you know that Scarborough had a beautiful natural beach? And Rouge Park. And so, yeah, so we just have all of these gems in our community. I could talk about Scarborough for hours, you know. The food culture in Scarborough is serious. I mean, if you want real Caribbean food, Scarborough, like Jamaican food, from the humblest patty to, you know, you can go to Patty Time on Lawrence Avenue in McCowan, which is where I go get my boxes of dozens of patties, or you can go to the, you know, the hip other cool, I think Drake gets his patty at Patty Stop. And you know, I went to Patty Stop just to check it out. It was a good patty, but I go back to Patty Time because that's my Jamaican authentic patty. You know, Neecee's in Scarborough is really good also. You know, so the food culture in Scarborough, and that's just, you know, I'm from Jamaica, so of course I know where all of the Jamaican food is, and you know, you can get like groceries, like, you know, real Caribbean groceries there. But also like, you know, there are other cultures as well that have just as authentic food and samosas and, you know, every single ethnic food that you can think of is in
Yeah.
Scarborough. And what I mean is like the best of the best, right? And it's not expensive. It's reasonably priced, and it's just really, really good food. I hope I made you guys all hungry.
I'm actually starting to think about dinner already.
Yeah, you know, one of the things, there's a lot of really great bakeries in Scarborough too, and so if you have a sweet tooth like I do, you know, I Googled the best bakeries in Toronto, and I think there's a list of 75. At least, you know, 15 or 20 of them are from Scarborough. So, you know, Scarborough has an amazing, amazing food culture. You know, Hakka, if you like Hakka, they've got like tons of Hakka restaurants.
Yeah.
Just whatever you enjoy and you like, you can find it there in terms of the cuisine.
Amazing. So that's
Chinese
actually,
food. Did I mention the Chinese food in Scarborough is very, very good also?
yes, I can lie about that. Food in Scarborough is the best, and I always find it that it's affordable too, so it is good,
Yes.
very authentic. And so I know recently the Obamas have shared the playlist. What are some of music genre you're currently listening to, jamming it during the COVID?
And can I, by the way, like there's an iconic photo that the University of Toronto Scarborough posted,
Yeah,
and it was during the Invictus Games with Prince Harry,
yeah,
and so President Obama was there. Vice President at the time, Joe Biden. Now he's the president, and Prince Harry. So there's a real nice, iconic photograph of them in Scarborough at the Pan Am Center. And, you know, it really shows you that we have a very special community in Scarborough, you know, and I believe that for all of Toronto and all of Ontario and all of Canada. I think that we, you know, as I said, like my family and I, we chose this country and it couldn't have been a better choice. Like, we're
hmm,
so blessed. You know, my younger brother that I talked about, who lived in, you know, dozens of countries, traveled all over the world, lived all over the world, and he always missed home. You know, he wanted to come back to Toronto, come back to Ontario and raise his family because he said there's no better place in the world to live than here. And the more we give of ourselves and really help to shape the community. And
yeah,
especially now, I really want our young Black people to really see that they're needed now more than ever. Like, you know, we want your skills, we want your talent, we want your creativity, we want your ideas. We really need you. So please just be bold. Don't be silent. Be bold. Offer whatever it is that you have, and I'm sure you'll get that welcoming reception and support for your ideas. So you're asking me about my playlist. Well,
yes.
so by now you know that I'm a girl from Scarborough. And you know, and I'm really old school. Like, so, you know, growing up in the early 90s, you know, people like Maestro Fresh West and Mishi Me,
Yeah.
and that was the scene that I came from, right? And it's such a creative scene in Scarborough. Like, you still have, you know, I mentioned Drake. He goes there, you know, just to hang out at the Patty Stop, right? So, you know,
Hmm.
in the weekend, Abel Tesfaye, you know, he grew up in West Hill, right? I believe that his mom is still in that community. There's a lot of creative artists who have come out of our community in Scarborough, and I'm so proud, and I'm just a proud Scarborough girl. At the same time, you know, like if I'm just relaxing and I want to listen to something, I'd probably turn to my old school playlist. D Nice, my friends and I have really plugged into that Instagram DJ because he's always playing something that we like,
Hmm.
and you know. So I'm from that era of old school. But then I'm also Jamaican, so you know, give me my tunes, my reggae anytime, anytime, any genre of reggae, I will listen to it. And but I love other music. I love jazz. I love opera. I love gospel. Like I'm very open when it comes to music. When it comes to creativity, I love live theater, live music, and artists. You know, people who are creative and they just give and offer their talent. I think it's really awesome. So
Indeed, indeed. I
yeah.
love how you stress the fact that Scarborough has a lot of great artists. They sure do. And also your playlist is incredible list of like different genre or mix of like good musics. And for you to be able to say that there's no place like home on being Ontario and being in Canada, that is actually a fact because that's actually our slogan for Ontario. There's no place like home. So you actually stated that, mentioned it very well. And just before we end our chat, I also wanted to get more in depth. So, what advice would you give young boys or young girls who are actually tuning in and wanted to take part in the Canadian politics? Like, what other message could you give them or advice?
Volunteer, you know, really sign up. And there's, as I said, there's going to be a lot of campaigns this in the next 2 years, and so there's no shortage. That's how I started. Before I became even a member of a party, I would support and volunteer for different candidates,
Mm-hmm.
just because I believe in democracy and in the electoral process. And I can tell you, as a candidate, you know, there are three things that we need. We need volunteers, we need donors, and we
Mm-hmm.
need voters, right? So we need all of those three things, and we are successful. You know, especially if you know, maybe you go online, maybe you go on OntarioLiberal.ca, and you'll see candidates there that you can get behind. They would love to have your help. They would love to have your support, and that's the best way. I had a young man that phoned me and said, you know, Mitzie, how do I get a job? I said, why don't you volunteer and just get to know the party, get to know the people in the party, let them get to know you. And you know, what tends to happen is that you know, when there are opportunities, you know, to join in a different way, then you're known. You know, you're not an unknown person. So I think that's important. And someone in the chat here said vote. You know my story. I won my last election by 74 votes. That's over tens of thousands, like 34,000 people voted. I won by 74, right? So vote. Your vote matters. In the Black community, we need to consolidate our vote. In my community, the Black and Caribbean vote is 14%. It's very high. It's very influential. Yeah. You will always get my attention, you know, when there are things that you want to say. 14% is a big voting block. We just have to coordinate it and utilize it.
Definitely. So,
and you know, young people could start. The young people could start, you know, whatever they want to call it, you know, youth voice and youth vote. Start youth vote. Why not?
Hashtag
What's stopping you? What is? I'm going to tell you a story, okay?
Yeah.
This is my message to the youth. And you know, one of my favorite songs is Bob Marley's Three Little Birds, right? So this is my message to you, right? And it's, think of yourself as, what is stopping you? What is stopping you? There's nothing. There's no law on the book. There's no, it's not the lack of talent or funds or resources or money or time, right? You can do anything. You can be anything. You know, use my life as your example. Young girl, came to this country. You know, I studied because I have my education, right? Remember? Make sure when you're called, you're ready. So I have those credentials. But nothing stopped me, right? I said yes to opportunity. Someone phoned and said, do you want to run in this riding? I said, yes. I gave up my really good job as a CEO because I wanted to serve. I had a calling to serve, right? And you have a goal and a passion and something that's been inside you since you were young, and you know that. So don't be afraid to pursue those dreams and those opportunities, and pursue them in a big way. Don't hold back. Don't fear. Even if you fear, feel the fear and do it anyway. Just do it anyway.
Indeed, indeed.
And I know that you will succeed. You cannot fail. My brother would say, there is no failure. The only time you fail is when you don't try. And you owe it to yourself to try. You can get up tomorrow morning and start doing the things that you've always imagined.
For sure. And I feel like that was actually a great advice you shared. And it actually touched home too for me. So I hope your message is able to inspire a lot of people that are currently listening, and the one that are going to be listening after we save this chat. It is very important for us to have inspirational leaders like you, and people that we can actually see ourselves and see the representation, so that way when we're coming in making the next step to fill these spaces, we know that it was done and we could do it too. So thank you so much for tonight. The other thing I wanted to also ask you is that what would you say is the 3 things you would want people to remember your legacy for?
One thing I want to say, like just in sort of like that advice, show up. All of you showed up tonight. And, so sometimes showing up is the easiest thing you can do, but showing up is almost the most important thing you could do. Right? So, and that's to really anything. For you showed up to those degrees and the education you went and pursued, right? You showed up, you just did. And then amazing things happen when you show up. I've proven that over and over and over and over and over and over in my life, just by showing up. And my legacy, I think I'm still growing. I'm growing. I was speaking with the wonderful Jean Augustine this week, and congratulating her on 25 years with the starting Black History Month and her motion. And I said, Jean, look at all the things that have changed in 25 years. And she says, everything has changed, Mitzie. She says, when I was starting out, people were asking me, who are you? Why do you think you can run? You're a Black woman. And now I'm telling all of you is, why not you? You better run, because we need you, right? All of that was changed in one generation. And so, I'm still making change. Like, I really feel that. I can look back and say, yeah, I worked on this amazing project with the Canada Pension Plan, and, people are going to have better retirement security because I was part of a government that really believed in that. Or equity in education and some of the work that I started there, it's still ongoing. It's still happening, even though there's a different government. We can't stop the movement because it's so vital. And, financial literacy was also something I embedded in our school system. But I did all sorts of other things that no one ever knows about, like kids in care, of children's aid and foster care. I gave $20 million when I was Minister of Education so that they wouldn't have to always move every time they changed homes, so they didn't have to change schools, right? They had those caring adults that could stay in their lives at school and their friends. The students with severe learning disabilities, and changing the way that we fund and support those students and those programs. I mean, there's so many things, right? And in my own local community, in my own local riding, I remember going to a school and there wasn't a playground. The kindergarten kids were playing in a chain link fence on concrete, these little kids. And I said, that's not acceptable. And so we built them a playground, right? So those are legacies too, right? Sistema Toronto, these young kids that play instruments and sing choir, and I completely support them, and I've watched them grow for this immersion in arts education. And and the confidence that I see in them, the confidence that I want to see in every young child. That's a legacy, for sure.
Indeed, indeed. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today. You are truly an inspirational leader, a fearful woman, and fearless one, and who actually took the wisdom and all the courage that you have experienced over the year to share with us tonight. And I'm going to open this minute for anybody in the live chat here if they want to ask our Honorable Mitzie Hunter any questions. Feel free to drop it in the chat and we can most definitely answer for you. And I just wanted to say once again, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have this discussion with you here.
Yes, it was wonderful. You created a wonderful space for the conversation. I appreciate it. And I loved reading the chats. Start before you're ready. Kathy Sue says, yes, Kathy Sue, just get up and start. Why not? You have nothing to lose. In fact, you can get a little further ahead than where you are in this moment.
One person said, Scarborough subway, STR the future.
SRT, that's the rapid transit.
Oh.
Yeah, so listen, I am a big supporter of Scarborough Transit. We need the subway because we can't have the subway stop at Kennedy Station. And unless you live in Scarborough, you may not understand that, but the subway just can't end at Kennedy. It has to go further into Scarborough, at least to the 401 at the town center, if not even further north later on as more funding is found. Mm-hmm. So that's an essential project, right? Just as how the Kipling's line goes all the way to the end of Toronto on the west side, we need it to go all the way on the east side as well. We also need to replace the broken down Scarborough Rapid Transit line, Line 3. It was breaking down when I was in high school. So you can imagine it's done, right? So we need to replace that. And I love all the discussions that people are having, making the current right of way a dedicated line for buses until the new system is catches up. Just, more transit for Scarborough. The LRT on Kingston Road to the U of T Scarborough and into Malvern is needed. So yeah, more projects like that. The bus route would come from Durham. So remember when you were going to U of IT, wouldn't that have been helpful? Having a rapid dedicated bus from Durham crossing into Toronto into the town center. We're going to build it.
That would be amazing, actually, for those generation that came after me. Obviously, I graduated, but those students who are coming back up into the education once the whole COVID is done is going to be very beneficial for them. And just kind of connecting the whole traveling experience will be useful for them as well. And other thing that I also wanted to ask you is like, if I know some people here, they would love to connect with you. So where is the best method of connection with you? Is it through like some social media or a website that they can connect with you?
Or just my office. It's online. Government is very transparent. We're easy to find. mhunter.mpp.co@liberal.ola.org. But all of that is available on my website, and it's on the Government of Ontario's website as well. I think those are the best ways, especially if you have a specific initiative that you want to talk about. So my job is to connect with people. Did I tell you I won by 74 votes? So you can't shut people out. The whole thing about being a politician is people.
Indeed. It was actually a great chat. I love to continue discussing with you. I know we're going over time, but thank you so much for being here tonight. And we love to have you back again in the future if you would allow us. And on behalf of CEE, it was a great pleasure, and I hope that a lot of our audiences gets to learn your wisdom and some of the challenges that you have faced, and they'll be able to be inspired and motivated to continue on improving our political sectors, but as well as just kind of our community as a whole, and also Scarborough in mind.
Yeah, and I just want to say to CEE, I really admire you. First of all, I remember going to one of your galas, and just seeing the creativity, like the integration of what was going on in the room, on stage, and in the digital. I thought it was amazing, actually, your digital capacity. And right now we are in a digital world. You know, social media influencers, people who understand technology and how to use it to influence ideas and people are really important. And you talk about getting into politics. If you could bring those skills to candidates and into politics, they're very sought after. And so keep doing what you guys are doing, you know, and see yourselves as leaders, not as, see yourselves as there's nothing lacking. Like there isn't a scarcity. There's just abundance.
Most definitely, most definitely. Thank you so much. And I know me being a CEE alumni, I have learned actually a lot of great things just for being with the program, as well as getting the opportunity to be in the digital tech industry. I all came through to CEE. So this platform is actually giving a lot of hopes to young Black entrepreneurs that are out there, as well as a young Black entrepreneur, young Black individual who wanted to be in the tech space. So I hope that your office is also open to do some collaboration in order to help also support CEE in the future as well, going forward.
For sure.
Yeah.
For
Thank
sure.
you so much.
I think CEE is great. I think what you're doing, just do more of it. Okay. So one of the things that I've learned from being in nonprofit and community before I came into government, and now that I've been in government, do whatever it is you're doing, do it bigger and bolder and for more people. Right? Because that's what's needed to have change in society. So that's what I mean by there's only abundance. There is no lack in our community. We have a very strong and healthy community, and our young people have so much talent that they can give and that they can use. And we just need to give them the space, and CEE is doing that. So thank you for doing that work.
Amen. As they said, bigger and bolder, all 21.
And happy Black History Month, everyone.
Same to you. Have a good night and stay
Thank
blessed,
you.
everybody. It was a pleasure.
Yes. Okay, good night. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.